Patriot, a weekly podcast broadcast live from a secret and undisclosed location deep behind enemy lines in Denver, Colorado. Here we speak the truth and nothing but the truth, so help us God. And now, without further ado, here's the host of the Hispanic Patriot, Hugo Chavez Ray.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Veterans Day special. Today, we're going to be honoring some veterans, Hispanic veterans, and talk a little bit about what each of us has encountered in the military, and hopefully send a shout out to all our veterans that are watching. And we want to thank you and honor you for your service. We want to talk about Veterans Day as opposed to Memorial Day and other holidays that relate to the military, because there's a little bit of confusion about which one is which. But Veterans Day is the actual holiday designated to honor all veterans, and it includes both active and non-active military. So we're going to have 3 additional guests, 1 Marine, 1 Army, and another fellow Air Force veteran with me today. I am Air Force, and I will be talking about what I did in the military, which wasn't anything too exciting, but I was proud to serve. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of Hispanics in the military, in the U.S. military, and hopefully disseminate some interesting facts to you. So let's, Peter, let's go ahead and bring in our other veterans, and we'll introduce them individually and give them a chance to give their own introduction. So let's go ahead and do that.
Hey, everybody.
All right. So we have with us Mr. Floyd Trujillo. He is our resident Marine veteran.
How you doing, everybody?
Jorge Chavez Ray is my first cousin who lives up in Iowa and served in the Army. And my good friend Greg Lopez, who is my fellow Air Force veteran.
That's right.
So we're going to give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves and just give us a little brief intro about your service, the time you served, what you did, and if you have any interesting facts, go ahead and introduce those. So we'll start with Greg. So Greg, go ahead.
Okay, hang on. I got to bring Greg up. Okay, you have the floor, sir.
So, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I don't know that I'll be able to stay the whole show, but you know what? I joined the Air Force right out of high school. I come from humble beginnings, and the only way for me to get a higher education was to join the military, serve my country with honor. I decided to join the Air Force, and I ended up at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. However, I did do all my technical training at Lowry Air Force Base. So Lowry Air Force Base was still active here in Colorado. And that was my first introduction to Colorado. I'll never forget. I was here in March of 1983. And it was Memorial Day. And Colorado had a blizzard in May. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? I could be in Texas on the lake. Instead, I'm marching out here in the dark in a blizzard. But I ended up in, like I said, White Sands Missile Range. If you haven't been to Alamogordo, the sergeant that gave me my order said, I'm going to send you to the biggest beach in the world. But there's no water, and sure is, there's no water out there in Alamogordo. I was a weapons specialist. So I worked out on the flight line. My job was to make sure that the fighter aircrafts had all the weapons assigned to them that were functional. And I think the one most important thing about that is, I served 4 years. I'm a disabled vet. I ended up losing 87% hearing in my right ear due to jet engines. But one of the best experiences that I had is I got to play goose because just like the Navy has Top Gun, the Air Force has Gunsmoke. And so flying in F-16s and F-15s and T-38s, that was an experience of a lifetime, being up in the sky, knowing that anytime I hear a jet engine, that's the sound of freedom. That's what freedom sounds like. So that's a little bit about who I am.
All right, Greg, thank you. We have some similar backgrounds. I'll tell mine in a little bit. Let's go ahead and go to Jorge, and our Army specialist.
Thank you for having me today. I'm honored to be in this podcast along with all the other veterans. Like my cousin said, I'm Jorge Chavez Rey. I came to this country in 1979. I joined the Army in 1986 out of the Chicago Maps, and I spent 28 years total in the Army serving in active duty. I went through 5 deployments. I've been to 17 countries total, and I had some great experiences and some not so good experiences. I guess one of my worst experiences was when in 2003 when we deployed to Kuwait right before we invaded Iraq, and we had to sleep in the desert under tents and eating MREs and water and having to find a hole to do our business. That was some rough conditions. But overall, it's been great. One of my best assignments was when I was assigned to the United States Embassy in El Salvador. That was great. Overall, I'm proud to have served honorably, and I wouldn't trade that experience for the world.
Well, thank you.
That's me in a nutshell.
That's great, Jorge. Thank you. Floyd, tell us about the Marines.
The Marine Corps, come on, everybody knows the Marine Corps, right? That's where it all starts, right? So, I was in the Marine Corps. I enlisted when I was 17 out of high school. So I from 73 to 77, and I was in the 6th Counterintelligence Team. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The discipline. I was stationed at El Toro Marine Air Station in Southern California, and like I said, it was a great experience. And my career was set. I'm 20 years old. I served 3 years in. It's time to re-up. So I was offered a package of $10,500 cash. I'm making $600 a month as an E5 sergeant. They were going to give me a package of $10,500 cash, another striped staff sergeant, and officers candidate school to become a counterintelligence officer. I thought, well, let's see, that's 3 plus 6 is 9. And that means I must do 20. So I thought, well, so I got out of the Marine Corps after 3 years. But like I said, the experience was incredible. Like I said, the veterans out there that you meet. And of course, when I went in, it was a tail end of Vietnam. It was already over, so there was no combat at this end anyway. But I give full respect to all veterans. I come from a long line of veterans. I can tell folks my family served this country from the Civil War to conflict today. Both grandparents were in World War One. I have an uncle who was on Iwo Jima in World War II. Another uncle that was a combat Vietnam veteran. So it's a long line, and I think that there's a lot of Hispanics that I know anyway in my family line that served in the military for this country.
Well, thank you. Well, my story is a little similar in years to yours, Floyd. I went in 72, got out in 76, tail end of the Vietnam War. I went to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. Arrived there in mid-May, just when the heat was heating up. And I remember very clearly watching people pass out in formation because they would lock their knees. So, and then the first weekend that we got to get a little bit of leave, a lot of people went into town. I wanted to go play golf on the base golf course, and later regretted it. I was walking, pulling a cart, and I only made it through 9 holes because the course is kind of rough, and it had a lot of hills, and I felt like it was 100 degrees out there. So I didn't make it through the whole 18 holes. But after basic, I got stationed at, after basic, I went to Lowry Air Force Base here in Denver for technical training. And then off my wish list, they gave me nothing. They sent me to Alamogordo, Holloman Air Force Base. And I remember clearly when the prop, it was a prop plane that landed in this, what looked to be a deserted area in the desert. And I looked out the window and I saw this little building that looked like a supply building. And I asked the stewardess, I said, well, where's the terminal? And she pointed to that building. She says, that's the terminal. It wasn't much bigger than my house is now. So I was, my first thought was, oh my God, where did they send me? Out in the middle of nowhere. And so, I remember White Sands very well. That was the missile range. And a lot of people don't know, but the White Sands for tourists is a different part of White Sands than the missile range. The missile range, we have access through the base. And I had a really interesting story one time when I took this girl out to go out on a picnic out there on a Sunday. And it started to get close to 5 o'clock. And I remember, they said you had to leave the area by, I think it was 6 or something. So we went back to the car, and my car was in the sand, and I had parked too deep into the sand, and I couldn't get out. It was spinning. And so the more I accelerated, the deeper I got. So I'm thinking, oh my God, we're going to spend the night out here, because they shut the gate and they don't open it till the next morning. And so I could just imagine what I was going to get from my commanding officer when I got back. But on a hunch, I started walking a little bit up the road, and I come around this bend and I see this big plow that's sitting there it's like a grader. And I jump into the cab, and lo and behold, the keys are in it. So I started it up. I rode it over towards my car, hooked up a chain and pulled it out of the sand, got in, and we barely made it to the gate. And the guard was looking at me. He said, what are y'all doing out here? I said, we just coming back from a picnic. So it was like a very close call, but that was my adventure in White Sands. I did TDY in Thailand and Germany. So my, what you would call my MOS or my specialty was, I still remember 64532, which was Inventory Management Specialist, which was a fancy name for supply clerk. But my job was, I actually got promoted, and I went to a section called NORS Control, which is NORS, not operationally ready supply. And I would sit in this little 8x10 room by myself with screens all over the wall and phones. I had like 10 phones on my desk. My job was to cannibalize planes from other bases around the world so that our flight crews for the F-4s could run their missions. So we were the 49th Tactical Fighter Wing, and they were flying sorties out of Thailand into Vietnam. So that was my adventure. Never got out of Holloman. I had orders to go to Hawaii about a year and a half before I got out. And like 2 weeks before I was getting ready to ship out, my CEO canceled my orders. So that was my my adventure there. I was pissed. Needless to say, I was very upset. I was looking forward to going to Hawaii, Hickam Air Force Base, and but I never made it. But got out in '76. And what made me join was I had some friends from high school, 3 very close friends who actually went in through the draft back in '68, and none of them made it back. So I lost 3 good friends. I had to attend 3 different funerals. The 2 of them were brothers. And then they had another brother that was supposed to have, well, he had served, he had gone in, but then they discharged him after his 2 brothers had been killed in Nam. So it was about a couple years, 3 years later that, something was bugging me and I decided to join, and the rest is history. So I was proud to serve. And it was a interesting experience, I got to say, especially basic training and tech school up here in Denver. So that's my little story. I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of Hispanics in the military, and one of the interesting facts is about when were Hispanics allowed in the military, and that is that was through an act of Congress back in 1917 to obtain needed manpower, and the Hispanic community was eager to serve its country. They included both native-born soldiers, mostly of Mexican descent, and new immigrants from Latin America, Mexico, and Spain. So that's kind of how we got in. But there is a history of a Hispanic serving as far back as the Civil War. And there was a decorated soldier back from the Civil War. Let me see, so one of the Hispanics who made a significant contribution to the U.S. military was out of several thousand Hispanic Army volunteers, mostly from the Southwest. They fought with distinction in Cuba during the Spanish-American War in 1898. Among them was Captain Maximiliano Luna, the only Mexican-American officer in the 1st U.S. Volunteer Cavalry, better known as the Rough Riders under Teddy Roosevelt. So we had Hispanics in that. And the first Latino soldier to receive a Distinguished Service Cross was Private Marcelino Serna in April 26, 1896. He was a Mexican-American who enlisted as an American soldier and settled from El Paso, Texas. He became one of the most decorated soldiers from Texas in World War I. Serna was the first Hispanic to be awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Now, a lot of people ask, why did so many Latinos join the military? And, that's an easy answer. Culturally, Latinos come from places that have long valued tradition of military service. So historically, Latinos first entered the U.S. in significant numbers through war. First in 1848 in a war against Mexico, and then in 1898 at the conclusion of the Spanish-American War. So that's kind of a little bit of tidbit on that. But one of the interesting facts about World War II is people wonder if Hispanics fought in World War II, and they did. Over 500,000 Latinos, including 350,000 Mexican Americans and 53,000 Puerto Ricans, served in World War II. exact numbers are difficult because, with the exception of the 65th Infantry Regiment from Puerto Rico, Latinos were not segregated into separate units as African Americans were. So Latinos were treated differently, but not as bad as the African Americans were. So during the war, one area of discrimination came from the segregated units, and Hispanic and Latino soldiers were mostly categorized as white. However, Puerto Rican soldiers were segregated into their own units. In addition, there were several firsthand accounts of soldiers facing horrible treatment because of their Hispanic background. So that's a little bit of history from World War II. Now, does anybody know who the most decorated Hispanic soldier was? Anybody ever know? His name was Agustin Ramos Calero. And he is the most decorated Puerto Rican and Hispanic veteran of World War II. Over the course of his 21 years of service, he earned the nickname One Man Army. Born in 1919, Agustin grew up in Isabela, Puerto Rico. So he is the most decorated among the Hispanics in World War II. So now, does anybody know how many Hispanics have won the Medal of Honor? 61.
Wow.
61 men of Hispanic heritage have been awarded the Medal of Honor. Of the 61 presented to Hispanics, 2 were presented to members of the U.S. Navy, 13 to the Marine Corps, and 46 to members of the Army. So that's your Medal of Honor winners among the Hispanic soldiers. Now, who was the first Latino to get the Medal of Honor? That would be Corporal Joseph H. De Castro of the Union Army for his actions at Gettysburg. So there's our connection back to the Civil War. On July 3rd, 1863, during the American Civil War, and the most recent recipient is Sergeant First Class Leroy Petrie for his actions in Afghanistan. So it's a very rich history of Hispanics serving in the military. Now, here's a good one. What military branch has the most Hispanics?
Probably the Army.
That's what I would say.
Well,
I'd say the Army
actually,
also.
it's the Marine Corps.
Ooh.
Wow.
Hispanics in the Marine Corps account for the largest minority group of that military institution.
And they're also the smallest branch of the military.
Yep.
250,000, right? About there.
About there.
So how
And
much
then
of the
honorable
how much of
mention,
the
Danny Dietz, was he of Latino descent?
No.
Dietz, I think, is Italian, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was Diaz. My apologies.
I thought he was Greek descent, but I don't know. I can't remember. I know who you're talking about. He's from Colorado.
Yep.
So how much of the U.S. military is Latino? All
I'd say
branches.
at least 20%, right?
35%.
35?
I'm saying 35.
Okay, so
I say 30.
go ahead.
Oh, hang on. Let me turn you up. Hang on.
Oh,
28%.
28?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So according to the Department of Defense, 17.2% of active duty military personnel from all service branches identify as Hispanic or Latino. That number is expected to grow by the year 2045. How many Hispanics are veterans now? According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, as of 2022, there are nearly 1.3 million Latino veterans, or about 8% of the veteran population.
Wow.
And
we wouldn't be where we are today as a nation without Hispanic veterans.
So by 2045, that figure is projected to reach 12%. And how many Hispanics fought in Vietnam?
How many?
So race and ethnic background, 88.4% of the men who actually served in Vietnam were Caucasian, 10.6% were Black, 1% other races, and 86.3% of the men who died in Vietnam were Caucasian, includes Hispanics. So they mixed it in there. But 170,000 Hispanics served in Vietnam. 3,000 or 5.2% of the total died there.
Gosh.
So those are some interesting facts about Hispanic veterans. But yeah, I remember serving with a few, but not too many in the unit where I was at. How about any of you guys? Did you guys have some fellow Latinos in your units?
Oh, yeah.
Southern California, where they were at.
Do you remember where they were from?
A lot from Texas.
New Mexico.
Texas?
Yep.
New Mexico?
Yep.
Okay.
California.
So what was the most interesting part of your service that you remember experience, as far as where you went, what you did? Did you guys ever have that drill in basic training where they come into your training class and give you a fake story about something that just happened?
Oh, they would jack with you all the time. I'm brand new to the unit, and so we're in the motor pool. They asked me to go find a bucket of bolts. I'm like, what? Or a bucket of steam. I'm like, what are you talking? You don't question it, right? You just go do what you got to do. But they're always messing with you. When you're new to the unit anyway. But I do remember that.
Well, I was in a class at Lackland. I remember very distinctly. It was getting close to lunchtime, and officer comes barging into the room. Everybody jumps up to attention, and there's everybody at ease. And he says, "This is classified information. We will be deploying at midnight tonight. The United States has been attacked by so and so, and we're off. And you're not allowed to contact your family. You're not allowed to contact anybody." So they dismissed us. We went to the chow hall for lunch, and we were supposed to start packing. And we got all packed up, and then around midnight, Sergeant comes in and he says, "False alarm."
Have you guys ever seen the movie Full Metal Jacket?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That boot camp scene is authentic. I mean, these guys would just mess with you and hurt you. And when I was in boot camp, we had to go through to hand-to-hand combat training, and they teach you how to choke somebody out with your hands and then with a rubber hose. So we had to pair up with a partner, and we get an 18-inch rubber hose. Each one of us had it. And so, of course, there's this stage up there out in the sand, and they asked for volunteers. Well, nobody volunteers, So they grabbed some poor guy, throw him up there. So the instructor's up there. The DI says, train the steps, choke somebody out with the rubber hose. They said, step 1, hose over the left shoulder of the guy. Step 2, cock it. Step 3, over here. Step 4, choke him. He's dragging this poor recruit around the stage. This guy's just out. So step 5, stop, release him, stand on his feet. Let him go and you shake him. And see, what they do is when they choke you out, they're cutting the blood off to your brain. It's not your breath. So
Yeah.
we had to pair up. We had to do it to each other 5 times. And they said, if we catch you guys cheating, we're going to send you up there with a drill instructor. So when they choke you out, you take a deep breath because you think it's the breath, but it's not just the blood going to your brain. And I think it was like 6 months later, they actually stopped doing that because they actually ended up killing somebody by doing that. Some big guy grabs you just with a rubber hose and just chokes you out.
Were you at Camp Lejeune?
And I was over at Pendleton.
Pendleton, okay.
Yeah. But it's like,
Yeah.
the thing I tell people this all the time is that the experience is.
Well, Jorge, you were a DI. So what?
What's that?
Where were you a DI at?
I was a drill instructor at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Ah, I didn't know that was a training facility.
Yeah, it was for MPs and chemical people and several other MOSs.
Okay.
But hey, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to have to drop off, but it's been nice meeting all of you, and you all take care.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll be talking to you.
All right, well, bye-bye.
Thank you. Hold on, Greg.
Okay.
You're muted right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, Hugo, I want to have to do the same, but I wanted to share with people. A lot of people, they see Top Gun and they see, the pilots, and I'm not sure if people don't know why the pilot salutes before he leaves is because we don't know if he's going to make it back. So as an honor to the pilot, we always salute them because we want to show respect that they're either going into battle, and we want to wish them the best. And we salute them just like we salute the flag, because when they're out there in battle, they're representing that flag. And I had the honor again, working on the flight line. A lot of people don't know, some of the traditions that happen within the military, where we as brothers recognize that we're all there, serving our country. And at some point in time, depending on, what our assignments are or what our jobs may be, we may lose each other. And so I think that's what, for me, Veterans Day, it's a band of brothers. This is a day where the brothers and the sisters come together and recognize each other for our commitment to Old Glory, to the flag. And so, one of the things that I will always let people know that, what, I don't watch the NFL anymore. And you guys can guess why I don't watch the NFL anymore. When they wouldn't stand for our American flag, that to me told me, it's time for me to go watch another sport. But, that's just embedded in me as an American. I continue to fight for that flag. I don't need a uniform to fight for our Constitution and fight for freedom. And so I'm lucky enough that I get to hear those F-16s once in a while fly over my house, because, brothers, that's the sound of freedom every time I hear it.
Yeah.
Right on.
Well, there's, we're all here.
Yeah.
We made it back, or we didn't get in. I wasn't in combat, and so I mean, we were among the lucky ones, but the ones that paid the ultimate price, they're not here. So my salute is to those guys and gals that never made it back. And this country needs to be able to never forget the service of all the military, because without the military, we wouldn't be where we are today. Unfortunately, we've had a administration that has decimated the military, in my opinion, after President Trump had rebuilt it and had it stronger than ever. And in 3.5 short years, we've got a guy that has basically destroyed it with all this wokeism and everything else that's going on. So as a veteran, I am not a happy camper when it comes to this administration. Uh, we're not going to get political here, but I have to say that because I I am saddened and I am pissed that they've done that to our military. And hopefully, this next election, we can bring back someone who will rebuild it again and get us back to the prominence that we deserve to be at. So that's our place in the world as Americans, and I believe that we have to fight for that because without the military, we're basically sitting ducks, and so we need to have a strong military. You know, President Reagan had it right: peace through strength. So we need to have that come back. So for those who are watching and listening out there, you veterans, I mean, we want to thank you for your service. For those who are active duty, we absolutely pray for you and wish you Godspeed because you're doing the tough job right now, especially in today's military. But we thank you for that. So that's my little take on what's going on.
Go ahead, Greg.
I got to head out, guys.
Okay.
Thank
You guys
for
have a good
joining.
evening, and we'll stay in touch.
Be safe.
And I'll be
Hi, Greg.
hey, I'm attending the Marines ball this weekend, so I'll be hanging out with a bunch of Marines.
I was hoping to, but I'm a little sick here, so I don't know if I'll make it tomorrow or not, but I'll give it a shot. God bless.
All right.
All right, man. Thank you. Take care.
Hey, well, I want to share a story with you, Hugo, talking about veterans and Hispanic veterans. 10 years ago, I ran for U.S. Senate, and I had this gentleman interview me, and his last question was, what do you consider yourself? Are you Hispanic American, Mexican American, Latino American? And on and on. I said, look, I said, my family has served this country from the Civil War to the conflicts of today. I said, my grandfathers, Sergio Martinez and Catalino Trujillo, served in World War I. My uncle, Ismael Trujillo, as I said before, was in on Iwo Jima, World War II. My dad's kid brother, his name was Seferino Trujillo. He's a combat veteran, Vietnam veteran. And I said, myself, I said, I'm a Marine, but I wasn't in combat. I served my country. I said, but when you ask me what I am, I said, I'm not going to go out there and die for Mexico or Spain or the country. I said, I'm going to fight for this country. I said, what I am is I'm an American. That's what I am. So what I'm trying to say is that as a veteran, I'm proud to be a veteran of Hispanic heritage, but I'm proud to be a veteran of this country, period. All races that belong to the veterans of this country. So thank you to all the veterans that served and are serving right now, or the military that's serving right now. So
Absolutely. That's when my family came, I was 7 years old. We came here from Peru. And one of the first things I remember my mom telling us was that we're in America now and we're here to be American, to become Americans. We can speak Spanish at home, but you speak Spanish out or speak English outside. And, I came, I didn't know a lick of English and started hanging out, with the kids in the neighborhood. And my favorite phrase was, "What's your name?" That was my first phrase that I learned. What's your name? And I would go up to everybody, "What's your name?" And they would get mad at me and start beating me up. The only thing I would say was, "What's your name?" I still remember that to this day. But yeah, my mom instilled in me, says, the spirit of assimilation. And that's something I think we're lacking today with other immigrants that come. When they come here, they want to segregate instead of, assimilate. And I think that's not healthy because you can maintain your heritage. And I agree with you. I'm American first. I am am proud of my Hispanic heritage, but I'm an American. I've lived here all but 7 years of my life. So, down in Peru, my family calls me the gringo in the family.
Güero.
So, el güero. And, a lot of people come up to me, even friends from Peru here in Denver, and they look at me and say, "You don't look Peruvian." And I said, "Well, what does a Peruvian look like?" It's like, and well, I know what they're talking about. I'm a little on the light skin side compared to some of my compatriots. And so,
but it's so important to realize, like, because that's the thing. We are the melting pot. We're not the mixed salad. They say Canadians call themselves they're the mixed salad. We're the melting pot. I just read an article the other day talking about assimilation versus segregation, and that without why the importance of citizenship, right? Because that's the adoption process that we've talked about. And so without, if you forego that citizenship process, then you never really get that sense of ownership, right? You never get that sense of I've been adopted by this nation. Now it's mine. And so, but it's so important for me, like I'm not of Hispanic descent. I'm of European and Scandinavian descent. And so a lot of times people on my side of the fence might think that, the history, of Hispanic Americans in the military all the way back to Civil War, that's amazing. And the numbers, it's important to hear that and to see that, how big, like you might see somebody on the street, like a white kid like me, see somebody of Hispanic descent on the street and think, oh, they came over or whatever. They're not. Yet you find out they're generations deep in the military. I mean, this is important to know because that's the point.
Let me share a story with you also. Is that, see, my family settled here in the Taos, New Mexico area in 1613.
Wow.
So I'm 13 generations here. But what's interesting and unique when it comes to that is that, you have there was a Hispanic brigade that was commanded by Kit Carson back in the Civil War. I have relatives that were in that. But what's unique, what's fun is that we have a history going back to 1613. All these names and some prominent names show up, and there's two names that jump out to me as two sisters, Ignacia Jaramillo and Josefa Jaramillo. Ignacia Jaramillo was married to a guy by the name of Charles Bent, whose brother was William Bent of Bent's Fort fame and the first governor of the territory of New Mexico. Her sister, Josefa Jaramillo, was married to Kit Carson. And both those sisters are my great aunts, going back in the family tree. So it's unique to go back and see all this. It's fun to see where you came from and to see see this history in this country from my family 400 years. At the same time, I look at my wife who immigrated here when she was 7 years old. So under my wife's bloodline, my kids are first generation, but under my bloodline, they're 14 generations. So it is a melting pot. There's a lot of good stuff in this country here, but it seems that a lot of folks take it for granted. And the one area that I think brings back the patriotism is when you join the military and you realize all the good people who we fight for out there.
Mm-hmm. What I find interesting is that historical tidbit about how Mexicans came across and fought with the Americans against Mexico in the war. Mm-hmm. So that to me showed that they weren't real happy with what the Mexican government was doing, especially the old story about the Alamo and the Texas war. They were ruthless, and so a lot of the Mexicans were actually siding with the Americans because they didn't like their leadership and their direction. So
a lot of them died at the Alamo too.
The what?
A lot of them died at the Alamo. A lot of Mexicans.
Right. Yeah.
I'm talking about that were in the Alamo itself. They were fighting for Texas.
Yeah, that was a beautiful history in Texas, but they fought and they eventually prevailed. But it is an interesting factoid that people from the other side came over to our side to fight against their own country.
A book I'd recommend is Blood and Thunder. Just check
Blood and Thunder.
Yeah. Historical from back in that era.
I'll read it. Yeah, I'd love to.
I love those kind of historical movies, and I'm a big history buff. I just started watching this new series on Paramount Plus. It's called is it? Oh darn it! Can't remember the name of it.
But outrage, buddy. You forget things,
It's about a black guy who fights in the Civil War, and he's a slave, and then he wins his freedom, and now it just started, so it's like in the second episode. But if you get a chance to look it up, it's something to do with Guinness or I can't think of the name of it. But if you have Paramount Plus, you'll be able to see the trailers, and it's a really I've only got to see the first episode, but it's really exciting. It looks like it's going to be it's produced by the same producer that produced Yellowstone. Sheridan, the guy that did that. So he does really good stuff. He's done, of course, he did Yellowstone. Then they had that 1883 and then 1923. Which were sequels and kind of prequels to the Yellowstone family. So it's a well done. If episode 1 is indicative of anything, it's going to be a good one. But I like history like that, where it depicts the Civil War, which was one of the bloodiest, if not the bloodiest, war that we've ever fought, and sadly, it was against our own people.
If you like history, you will like the book Blood and Thunder. I think you'll enjoy it.
Who wrote that?
I don't know. It's my room.
Okay.
I'll send you some information on it.
Hampton Sides.
Huh?
Hampton Sides, from what I can see.
Okay.
Yeah, the epic story of the epic story of Kit Carson and the conquest of the American West. Is that the one?
That's it.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Hampton Sides.
I'll have to look that up.
So Floyd, just as we've heard a little bit about your experience just with serving and your take. Now we're gearing out to the Hispanic community, and politically speaking, the majority of Hispanics, from what we've seen, at least younger ones, would typically lean left, or even if there's an anti-American rhetoric among the Hispanic community. I mean, what would you say to a niece or a nephew that is kind of in that camp, the more progressive liberal side that doesn't have a lot of patriotism, or to the immigrant that maybe there's a Hispanic, an illegal Hispanic American, or someone that doesn't feel like they are an American or they're living here, whatever the case may be. I mean, what would some words of wisdom from where you're standing, someone who's generations deep in this nation, who's grown up, but is also very, very proud of your heritage. What would you say to someone in that particular situation?
What you have to do is you have to go out there and vote your beliefs. Okay. The problem we have is that we throw a lot of feelings out there. Okay. It's Hispanics generally, the majority of them are very family oriented, hardworking people. They believe in God, faith, family, and the American dream. I think that the problem that we have as leaders or people that talk to these folks, we don't engage with them in talking to them about this country. Every one of them believe in faith. I mean, there's, the folks that are coming over right now illegally, the border should be secured, period. But one thing they do have in common is that they do have their Christian faith. That's the one thing that they actually lean on. That's about it. I think that if we can just engage with them, because the Hispanics actually have the lowest voter participation rate of any race in this country. They're like at 40%. So if you think about that, let's say 60% of them vote Democrat, the other 40% vote Republican. Of the 40%, there's still a block of 60% that's untapped that people aren't even looking at to get into. I have a friend that came over here. He came over here legally. He's married, has 3 kids now. A few years ago, he's in line, and they're from Mexico, but they're conservatives and Republicans, and they're in line talking in a grocery store to each other, and they're speaking in Spanish. And this lady in front of her, an older white woman, she turned to him and said, "I voted for Trump." And they both said in English, "So did we." The perception that because someone's skin color dictates who they vote for is shameful. Okay. And we have to get over that. But the thing is, the problem that we have in this country is that you have a party that uses racism, hate, and fear to distance, to separate people, which is the Democrat Party. It's all about fear and racism. And if we can get beyond that and just start talking about our beliefs, what do we want as a family? Who do you want for your kids, education-wise, health-wise? And trying to break away from using this fear and hate to separate us is what we have to do. And I think talking to them one-on-one and not shoving things down their throat or telling them, do what I tell you, but actually engage in meaningful conversation and bring them on board is what we need to do.
Yeah. Give them a sense of ownership, right? I mean, people just want to be valued, right? They want to know that they matter.
Yeah, and the only way to do that is to engage in conversation. We don't do that as a party. I think that's the problem we have.
Well, the numbers here in Colorado. The numbers here in Colorado are astounding. We've got like 1.1 million Hispanics. About half of those are eligible to vote, somewhere around 600,000. And then only about half of those are registered and or participate. Like you said, they're not participating. So there's a voting block out there of 300,000 roughly Hispanics who are eligible to vote that are not engaged. And so to me, that is like a huge red flag. It should be a beckoning call to the Republican Party to go out there and put the effort in to find those people, engage them, bring them into the fold. And because I guarantee you the overwhelming majority of those, their values align with ours.
Absolutely.
And so the message has to be that, and I've got this website URL reserved that I haven't got to use yet, but it's called voteyourvalues.com. And if we can get Hispanics to vote their values and not be engaging them in confrontational things,
It's game over.
and just talk about, what are your values? You should be voting your values, right? I mean, that's just common sense. So they're entrepreneurial. They have businesses. They have families. They are people of faith. Everything that they do reeks of being a Republican, and because of the platforms and the values of the parties. The Democrat Party is not even recognizable anymore based on their history. I mean, that party has been taken over by radical Marxists, in my opinion. And, that may sound extreme, but it's really not if you really pay attention to what's going on and who's controlling that party. When we have terrorist sympathizers walking the halls of our Congress, that is just appalling to me. It's a huge disconnect. And Hispanics in particular who come from dictatorial countries should recognize that for the most part. Now, the Cubans we know do.
Right.
And there's more coming over all the time. The numbers are increasing, but we need to get them to a point where it's sufficient to push the Republican candidates over the top.
Let me share two stories with you real quick. One was 10 years ago when I ran for office. I spoke at the Douglas County GOP. And I told them, I said, the saving grace of this nation will be once you guys realize there's a population base out there that shares the same belief structure, we refer to as Hispanics. Those people have the potential to turn this country around if you engage with them.
Yeah.
5 or 6 years ago, I was at a state convention, and I was talking to one of the GOP higher-ups. And I asked them, I said, why don't you guys engage with the Hispanic population? I mean, they believe in the same things that your party platform believes in. What is it? And they told me, well, the problem is that we don't share the language, and we don't, we don't speak Spanish. And I said, are we talking right now? Are we not engaging in conversation? It's just like, and how it is. You go every 2 years, the state GOP gives us a call, you, myself, other Hispanics here in Colorado, gather around and say, how can we get the Hispanic vote? How can we get Hispanic vote? And we give them a format. And then you know what happens?
They ignore
2 years
it.
go by. 2 years go by. They say, hey, we come and tell us how to get the Hispanics. Every 2 years they call us and they say, okay, thank you, goodbye. So we have to do something. I think it starts here, okay? Because it's not going to change unless we change it, so we're going to find a way to do that.
Well, that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, is because I wanted to target market to the younger Hispanic population in particular. And I'm talking anywhere from 25 to 30 up to the 45 to 50 range. That demographic is ripe for connecting. They, and I've met some good young Hispanics. We have a friend that we made. His name is Nick Razzo, who is out of Colorado Springs. He moved down here from Chicago, and he is extremely articulate, knows the issues, and is very passionate. So he's the type of person that the party should be recruiting. He's getting involved. He's been getting settled in this past few months, but he's going to be an activist, and he's on our side. So, and he can speak. He's 30 something, right?
Young man, like early 30s.
So,
we got it.
So, he's the kind of guy that can go and connect with those younger voters and speak their language and say, look, he could say things that I can't say. Like, hey, you're being duped. You're being used. You're being used for your vote. They're lying to you, and you're going right along with them instead of thinking for yourself and figuring out what is best for you and your family. So those are the kind of activities. I agree with you. It's the same old, but I think, Chairman Williams is doing a better job in that regard. So I'm hoping that something comes of that. They're making the effort. Every candidate that calls me and talks to me, I tell them, go to the Hispanic community, go sit down with the people in their district and sit down and talk to them, but don't go in there to preach, go in there to listen. And that's if I was a candidate, the first thing I'd do is go in and say, how can I serve you? What is important to you? And then sit there and listen. Don't talk. And so those are the things that are needed. I think we're making some headway. The numbers are showing that Hispanics are coming our way. President Trump did a much better job than people give him credit for.
Great job.
With Hispanics, and with God's grace, maybe we can get him reelected and get back to business again. But yes, this is a huge issue for American politics. Hispanics are the fastest growing demographic, and without Hispanics, neither party is going to win anything. So it behooves the Republican Party to garner as much of that vote as they can so that we can turn the tide. Colorado is not a blue state like people think. Okay. we had a guy on. Go look at some of our podcasts and look at the one that for Jay Valentine. Have you heard of him?
Mhm.
Okay, so Jay's got a tremendous activity. It's called Fractal, and they identify the anomalies in the voter rolls. And his job or his task is to go ahead and help clean those up. And he's been to multiple states. So those are the things that need to be done. But he says that according to his research, Colorado is not a blue state. It's just that there's so many voting anomalies that it tends to lean that way. So we have to do the work, and you and I are fighters. We don't quit. So I'm not going to quit till I don't have any breath left in me. They're going to have to carry me off. So, well, it looks like we're out of time, but thank you for coming on, Floyd, for Veterans Day, this Veterans Day special. I hope we're able to reach some veterans out there. We want to thank all the veterans for the service. Our nation needs veterans, but we also need active duty military, and I think we're going to be coming up on a very interesting year indeed. So we pray for the nation, and we hope that we can prevail in the long run. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for your service, Floyd.
Happy Veterans Day to you too, Hugo and Peter. Thank you too.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We hope to have you again soon.
You guys take care.
It's an honor. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Good night.
All right. So everybody, we'll see you next week, same time, same place, Thursday, 6 p.m. This is a special Veterans Day episode of the Hispanic Patriot. So stay tuned for more. We love you. God bless you. God bless America.